everybody, it's Tom Christie back in the carving shop, and this will be session 2 of carving a half-size Drake Red-breasted Merganser. In the previous session, if you missed that, we got the head shaped up. We did a bill insert because of how narrow and thin it is, and used a hardwood insert there. Today I want to finish up the head, a little bit of grinding detail to blend this crest that we installed into the rest of the head, and then we'll get to work on the body. Get that rough shaped at least, see how far we get today. If you're enjoying my channel, please hit the subscribe button. That does help me. It doesn't cost anything, doesn't commit you to anything other than it's kind of a show of support for the channel, and it does help me out. All right, let's bring the camera in, take a look at the planning work for the body. We'll get it cut out on the bandsaw and shaped up. Welcome back. All right, I've done a little bit of sanding with 150 grit paper to smooth out the Bondo a bit. And now I want to pull a few grinding marks from the wood Tupelo head through and into the crest to kind of break up this line a bit. We can't disguise it completely, but we can do a little better job of blending it in to the surrounding area by pulling some grinding lines through there. So we'll do that next. I'm going to use this small ruby cylinder and just to use the edge of that to kind of pull some lines and create some grooves here and try to blend those into the bristles and through the Bondo so that when we paint this, you're not going to see the Bondo as much as if we just left it the way it is. So, and I'm trying to vary the depth of some of these so that, again, we can cast some shadows through that area once it's painted and make this crest look like it's a part of the head. It's not the cleanest procedure, and I'm going to damage a few of the bristles as I do this. That's okay. I've got enough bristles in there. But there you can see what I'm doing in the light, kind of putting those grooves in there. At the top of the head here, I want to blend these in to the crown. And this is not a fully decorative bird, so it's meant to be a gunning style bird with this type of functional crest in it. Not a fully decorative carving. So I'm just going down the other side, putting some grooves in there. And if I hit some of the bristles, I'm just taking those out as I go. I use a paintbrush here to just dust off what I've done so far so I can take a better look at it. Now I've got a little cylindrical ball, and I want to go back to the bill here and carve a little bit of a groove running through the nostril. So you can see that in the light. It's just characteristic, and as I looked at the bird a little bit longer, I thought this really does help add to the realism of the bill. So I'll give that a little sanding. All right, now that we've got the head in shape, I want to do the body, and I'm going to cut the side profile on my bandsaw very carefully. And this is pretty much how I cut out all my birds. I start with the side profile like this. I am going to speed up this video a little bit so we can get through it quicker. Okay, I've got this at 2x speed now. And I've got a 1/2 inch blade on my bandsaw right now. Normally I'm using a 1/4 inch blade, which lets me go around corners a little more easily. The 1/2 inch blade is stronger, and I just do a little extra work here going back and cutting these sharp corners. I actually broke my 1/4 inch blade, because I'm sure you're wondering, well, why are you using a 1/2 inch blade, Tom, if a 1/4 inch works better? I do have a couple of new 1/4 inch blades ready to put on, but this blade has been working well, so I'm sticking with it for now. Now I've tacked the top scrap piece back on that has the top-down pattern on it, and I'm going to carefully follow that pattern around. If you've watched some of my other videos, you've seen this process before. You can probably skip through it. I just wanted to include it here for somebody that might be doing a half-size bird and just starting out. These smaller birds are a great starter project. There's not as much wood involved, not as much carving time. So kind of a nice starter project. So I want to include the band sawing. And I always include a note on bandsaw safety. If you notice, I'm keeping my fingers as far away from the blade as possible. It's a very powerful saw. They're very safe in general, but you want to keep your fingers and hands away from being close to that blade. So you can see I just shifted my right hand to put it on the side so that my thumb is not anywhere close to that blade when it exits. Get rid of those scrap pieces. The Red-breasted Merganser Drake has a very characteristic group of feathers on the side of the breast. And there's a little notch there right here that I want to cut into the top-down profile. That helps me locate how far back do that group of feathers come on the side of the bird. And that'll help later when we're carving the bird. See those two little marks? I always mark those for myself because that's where the side pocket meets the side of the rump and where the tail meets the side of the rump, and I never want to lose those positions so that we keep that symmetry from side to side. Just a little reminder. And since I couldn't make that tight bend with a 1/2 inch blade, I just cut those out like that, and then I'm going back and finishing the job like this. One of these days I'll get my 1/4 inch 6 tooth per inch blade back on the bandsaw. All right. Now I've taken the scrap piece off of the top. I've set my bandsaw table at a 30-degree angle. And I'm just very carefully making a little trim cut here to take out material on the lower side of the side pocket there. And as I'm exiting here, I'm making sure I'm not cutting off too much and cutting into the side of the tail, which I've done before. Just picking up the other side. The bird is nice and flat on the 30-degree table here, so very easy to make these cuts. Now I'm going to use the side of the bird and trim off a little material. This cut is not quite as stable because you've got a rounded surface there, and I'm kind of just carefully rocking the bird through that. And I'm going to take one more trim cut just kind of freehand, but keep my hand away from the blade in case it wants to pull the bird down. Same thing on this side. You can not do these cuts if you're not comfortable with doing it on the bandsaw, and especially on a smaller bird like this, it's relatively easy to grind off that material and not cut it off like I'm doing here. Just being very careful. All right, the body is cut out. All right, I've used my patterns to do some layout work. I've centered the neck there, kind of located the cape. These groups of feathers that come back here, very distinctive. I've got those marked because they were on the top-down pattern here. So I know where those are located. I know where the rear of the side pocket is here, the beginning of the tail. These primaries I'm going to tuck on either side, kind of in a relaxed position, so I don't have to worry about carving raised primaries there. And I've got the tail elevation located on both sides. So now I'm just going to use my carving equipment and do some general rounding, and then come back and do some more detailed layout. These scapular groups are going to be separated around the center line, so I'll do that after we round the body. Okay, I'm going to use my 3/4 inch saber-tooth burr, round nosed, and just carefully begin to define this area around the neck. And this is a big burr, but I'm just going to use it to generally shape things up, and then I'll have to go to some smaller equipment to get in some of the tight spots. I just pointed to the line there. I'm just reminding myself I don't want to grind that off and lose that definition on where that comes. Those breast feathers come back and meet the side pocket. I'm running this at normal speed just to give you a feel for the speed of grinding here. A smaller bird, so not as much to hang on to, but if you notice, I'm keeping my hand as far away from the grinding bit as I can. You know, you tend to run into differences in grain, and sometimes if you're pulling against the grain, like I am here, the burr can jump a little bit and tend to snag. And so you want to keep your hands away from the burr, just in case that happens. Okay, enough safety advice, but I think especially for newer carvers that are not used to the power grinding equipment, you really need to know those things to stay safe. Just shaping up that area between the breast and the side pocket and putting a little bit of a dip in there. And now I will speed this up. Just be aware that I'm going to be showing this at 2 times speed from here on out. We can get through it a little quicker that way. All right, this is 2 times speed. One of the nice things about these smaller sized carvings is they go pretty quickly. When you're used to a full size eider or some very large bird and then go to a smaller one like this, it's kind of refreshing. You can see I'm beginning to define that group of breast feathers that wrap over the side there. Just rough at this point. We'll come back and pencil that in and do some more carving later. Now I'm taking material down on top of the tail, and these primaries are going to be tucked along the rump there. So I don't need to worry about too much about taking material off there, and I'm just shaping things up in general. So we want a nice rounded profile from the back when we're done with this rough carving. Now I'm going to switch back to normal speed, and this is a little cone or flame-shaped burr, and I can use the tip of this to get in behind the neck here and just round those areas that I couldn't get to with the larger 3/4 inch burr. And then I can use this bit as well to do more definition around the tail here on top and below to really begin to define that and take this down to my guideline on each side and angle the tail and begin to form it into its proper shape. And then feather the tail coverts in here so they meet up with the tail. Same thing on this side, very carefully. And don't push these burrs too hard, would be my advice. Just let them do the work and take multiple passes rather than trying to dig too deep too fast. So you can see the top side of the tail is starting to shape up there. Now I need to work on the underside. So I'm just using the edge of this burr to cut in under and then round the rump. We're on the end of the piece of wood here, so there's end grain. And anytime I'm using a burr around end grain, I just take my time so that it doesn't snag and jump on me. There's also carbide cutters in this type of shape that you may prefer using. I just got used to using these burrs, and that's the way I prefer to carve. But there are lots of different approaches. I'm just working that other side now, define the underside of the tail here. I'm going to leave the tail thick, maybe 3/16 of an inch thick on this bird because it's meant to be more of a gunning style decoy. I'm not going to put a keel on this bird because it's going to be a shelf rider. Being a half-size bird, it's not a real decoy, but kind of in the style of a decoy. I'm just taking the bandsaw marks off the edge of the tail there as well, and we can sand that later. That's starting to shape up. Just a little more work around the neck here, and then we'll be able to go back to the bench and do some more layout work to carve in some of the feather groups. All right, let's do the layout work.
Okay, we've got the generally rounded shape. And now I want to do some more layout work. I had located the back of the cape here, so I'm using my dividers from that point, and I want to strike a little arc on either side of the center line and then go back and get my distance from the center line here, trying to locate each of these points. So I'm going back to the center line. Right there's my arc. So that's where I want to be. Right there. That's the cape. And then these side feathers coming off the breast come up here and meet up with that point. So we'll just do a little bit of minimal carving there to define that. And then I want to lay out this area between the primaries. And at the widest point there, it's about 5/8 of an inch. Just to give me a frame of reference, and those come off of the cape and spread out back here. And then go into the tertials here. I'm just going to get a reference dimension from the center of the back of the tail to the back of the tertials there, just so I know how far back to bring those on both sides. And on my pattern, tip to tip, I'm about an inch and 3/16. So pretty close to where I have them there. And then the primaries come off of that group and go quite a ways back here. My pattern is about 1/2 inch between the primaries. About where I have them. You can eyeball a lot of this stuff. I just like to use the dividers and calipers every once in a while to make sure I'm in the ballpark. And then I want to lay out the side pockets here. Get my calipers. And I did add about a 3/16 of an inch depth to my pattern. Just when I looked at it, since this is going to be sitting on a shelf instead of in the water, I just wanted to add a little more fullness there. So I'm marking the top of the side pocket on both sides. And that comes off of this area in back. There's my mark. So that forms the side pocket area. And then let's get a dimension up front here where it meets this group of feathers. And again, I'm going to add about 3/16 depth to my pattern. Mark that both sides. I just thought I'd show a little of this layout work. It's been a while since I've shown the layout process, and I think that's helpful for somebody just starting out especially. And then from a top down, I want to get a dimension on the width. Right at the back of the cape here, it's the widest point, and that's here and here, and then at the side pocket, the rear of the side pocket, from the center line again. So that helps me know how much I've got to take out here to form the side pocket and roll it over a little bit, so it's not just pancake flat. All right, that gives us a good clue where to do some more carving. And I've got those primaries going into the side pocket there. So I want to keep that angle in mind. You know, we don't want these angled way down here, like the wing is somewhere down here. It needs to make sense because that wing tucks into that side pocket and curls back around underneath here. So we just need to keep those angles in mind so they make sense. If we bring them too high, it'd be like the wing is up here somewhere. Okay.
I'm going to go with my 1/4-inch burr, cylindrical burr here. And the first thing I want to do is put a little definition in these side pockets. So I'm using the burr to go along and cut the side profile that I'm looking for, and the top-down profile as well. And then I'm going to cut a little more material out here so we define that group of feathers that go along the side of the breast. And now I'm rounding the scapulars here. I didn't have to cut too deep here. The side pockets are relatively shallow on this bird. Long and shallow. Now I'm rounding the side pocket so we get a nice rounded shape. In both directions, up and down. Now I'm using the edge of the burr here to cut in a little bit under the rear of the side pocket and put some definition around its shape there, and rounding that as well. I'm going to work this group of feathers a little bit more. I don't want to cut too deep here, but I want those to be nice and rounded as they meet the side pocket feathers and up here to the cape. It's a beautiful group of feathers on the side there, and always look forward to the painting of those. It really nails the look of the merganser. Now I'm using the edge of the burr to begin to define the scapulars up here. Cut in the tertials. I'm just cutting a shallow groove here with the edge of the burr. And I want to do the same thing around the primaries here. And we're going to keep this area in between the tertials and primaries as a group of feathers along the back that are kind of puffed up. So I want to keep my center line intact there and just round in both directions. Now I'm cutting under the primaries there to define that group of feathers as they tuck into the side pocket, using the end of this bit, which has teeth on it, to kind of take down the coverts and blend those in. So these scapular groups are kind of separated and droop down into the side pocket on this bird, just to put it in a nice relaxed position. Now I'm working the back edge of the tertials there as they overlap the primaries and tuck into the side pocket. There you can begin to see a little bit of definition around the tertials. I'm going to work this other side in similar fashion. And I'll jump ahead a little bit here because this is basically a repeat of what I just worked on the opposite side. Okay, a little farther along, you can see I'm kind of defining the cape there, which overlaps these scapulars, putting a little bevel on the edge of the cape to soften it. And this is all rough carving, just to get the shapes generally right. And then I'll use my sanding, half-inch sanding drum to kind of finish sculpting the bird and also remove all the grinding marks. I'm just going back as I see things that need to be cleaned up here and there and removing a little material in spots that were still a little messy. So pretty quick work with this burr to get the bird rough shaped. And especially in this small size, as I said before, it's kind of a pleasure doing a small bird once in a while. You can see I'm using the end of the bit there again to kind of clean up that area between the scapulars and the primaries. Now I'm going to use that sanding drum. I'll go over the entire bird and come back. All right, I've got the body shaped up and I want to attach the head before I do any final sanding. So I'm mixing up some 2-part epoxy. I'm going to use that technique where I drive a screw into the head, drill a clearance hole in the body, and then fill that clearance hole with epoxy. And this will just add some strength to that neck joint, because the head of the screw will be embedded in this epoxy down below. You can see I've just worked to kind of fill up that pocket, so I'm sure that the head is surrounded by the epoxy. I'm going to put a little on this side as well. And cover the head so there are no gaps there. And I'll have to wipe off some epoxy here, but I just want to make sure I've got a good joint there.
just use paper towel to clear off the excess epoxy. Sorry about the shop heater, but it's cold in Nebraska. And I can't always wait until it turns off to film. I know you'll forgive me. I hope you will. All right, I've got the epoxy cleared off. For the most part, I want to get that back on the registration marks I had for myself. We'll let that set up, then take care of the neck joint. I did use some plastic wood to fill that nail hole. The other nail hole was in the neck. All right, he's starting to shape up. Just give you a quick 360 around the bird. I'm gonna let that epoxy set. I'll be back. Now I'm using plastic wood and using acetone to smooth it out. And sometimes I use Bondo for this purpose. I just thought for this small scale, it's going to be easier to feather things out like this with the acetone. That's looking pretty good. I sanded the bottom smooth with my belt sander and get it branded here. Sealing it up with Prolux semi-gloss wood finish, several coats. Yeah, I've got the bird sealed and I just primed it. And you can see the crest is looking pretty nice. And will look even better when we get paint on it. All right, we'll let that dry. Pretty happy with the way it looks so far. Okay, everybody, that completes the carving of the half-size red-breasted Merganser Drake with the inserted crest and all. And in the next session, we'll get this little guy painted up. I think he's going to look great. Until then, Tom Christie signing out. Good carving to you.